This video is going to be about having friends outside the game running high-level NPCs. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give an update on Galder's Gazetteer. If you don't know about the Galder's Gazetteer project, please check out the link in the description. It's really cool. You'll be really touched by it. I got the idea of having friends outside the game running NPCs from, the one guy with the hair. But as far as I know, it's just something that he's mentioned in passing, never something that he's really fleshed out. So I did. I'm fortunate in that I know a bunch of people who have DM'd for in the past but are not part of my current home game. But they still want to play some part in how it unfolds. So I give them a role to play, an important NPC that acts under their control. I like doing this for a few reasons. One, because it offloads some of the world building to another person. They're the ones who are controlling how this NPC is going to think and feel, how to act. It gives some more dimension and texture to the campaign that I don't have to come up with. Secondly, I found that my friends will often come up with things that I wouldn't have come up with on my own. Things that I wouldn't have anticipated. And so it's really fun to be surprised by having all these important people in your world act in ways that make sense in character, but you didn't expect. And lastly, the main players usually find it really cool to know that the game extends beyond just what happens at the table. I have a lot of fun doing it, they have a lot of fun participating, and so I'm gonna share a few key things that I do that I think really makes this work. The first thing we're going to do is create a character for your friend to play. And so right off the bat, we see this is a lot different than normal D&D. In normal D&D, the player makes the character they're going to play. But here, the DM is going to make the character, but someone else is going to play it. The DM making the character is important because we don't want our friend to play just anybody. They have to play somebody of significance because that's where the fun is going to be. They have to be able to affect the story. But also important is choosing what type of NPC they're going to play. I would not recommend having them play a main villain because the main villain's actions and responses to the player's actions are what's supposed to be driving the plot. Because you are actually running the game, the main source of opposition should be under your control. Giving up the ability to act out the motivations and reactions of the villain, the person really at the crux of your story, is going to wreck the pace of your campaign. So I wouldn't recommend having your friends run that. I also wouldn't advise letting your friend run an important friendly NPC. The NPC you put in your game to serve as a guide, someone to offer assistance, make recommendations, or serve as a mouthpiece for the plot. And this is especially true for NPCs that you need to cooperate or are essential for you to reach the next act of your campaign. If you tell someone else that they get to make decisions for a character, but the decisions that they make are detrimental to the framework of your adventure or are harmful to the party, then you've put yourself in a bad position. Because this is still your game and you still have to move the plot forward, this puts you in a weird spot where you either have to ignore your friend's character choices or do more work to get the campaign back on track. And that defeats the whole purpose because the whole idea was to make your campaign more layered and rich without doing more work. So if it's a bad idea to let your friends run a friendly NPC, and also a bad idea to let your friends run the main villain, what's left? I have my friends outside the game run antagonists, specifically B-line antagonists. Not the main driver of the campaign, but the opposition in a sub-story. Some of my favorite NPCs to let friends play are the leaders of opposing factions, or the enemy from a character's backstory. This works better than a neutral high-level NPC because it assures your friend's going to have a role to play in at least one conflict. It also lets your game develop a more complex texture than it normally would, because now all of your side quests and backgrounds have a more complicated, a more fleshed out antagonist behind them than they normally would. Your friends can put a lot more effort into thinking through your antagonist's eyes, and because you, as the DM, have control of when you shift the spotlight over to the B-line plot, you have a lot more control over the pace of when you want this other person to come in and have a big say, rather than needing to rely on them in order to pull the plot forward. You don't have to keep up constant contact or else have your campaign grind to a halt. Your friend doesn't need to be bothered with every single little detail of every single plot point because their narrative arc isn't center stage. All right, so how exactly does this work? Well, I make a cool handout and then I run a play-by-mail style game. The handout is their equivalent of a character sheet. It tells them who they are playing. Because remember, they're not playing an NPC of their choosing, they're playing a character that already exists in your world. They're going to be making decisions from a point of view that you have already established. I've linked 4 of these Antagonist Sheets in the video description, below the like and subscribe button. And they all have a similar format, and I'm just gonna go over those really quickly with you. If you have a friend who is willing to play an antagonist, I would recommend sending them over 1 or 2 to choose from. And then once they've made their selection, then you can begin a play-by-mail style game. Now, the handout, as you saw, had some prompts for activity, some suggestions of what to do. But to really kick things off, what I like to do is I send them a letter written from one of their lieutenants that summarizes the situation, suggesting some courses of action, and then asking what they want to do. Then you wait for your friend to write back describing what they want to have happen. Yes, I want to go arrest those heretics. I'm going to capture the fort. I'm going to put some spies in the city. I do this in very broad, abstract ways. I don't want this to get bogged down in the minutia of 5e. This is at a higher level. This is a narrative exercise. It's almost a pure storytelling experience. The actions that the antagonist takes are usually played out over several sessions. While the adventures go day by day, these antagonists essentially take a faction turn. They operate on a week-by-week basis. Whenever the player's actions do anything that might affect the NPC's factions, holdings, reputations, or plans, I make sure to include that in my next communique. It is the easiest way to make sure you get that NPC and their resources in conflict with what the players are trying to accomplish. Eventually, the PCs will level up and want to take on the faction boss, that antagonist, directly. They'll want to go hunt them out and have a fight. And this is one of my favorite moments as a DM. It's all this planning and texture coming together. What I've always wanted to have happen is have that friend come over and like co-DM the game with me and run that antagonist in person. But for me, it's never panned out. Maybe it will for you. Yeah, that's it. That's the video, folks. I like this one. It's a pretty cool subject, something I have a lot of fun doing. But real fast, I want to talk about Galder's Gazetteer. We're about 2/3 of the way with the number of signups we want before the Kickstarter actually launches. And I've also released a little bit of the expanded conditions. My first bit of homebrew is going to be in it. I really want to get a lot of eyes on this because I suspect it's going to carry a lot of mechanical weight. We have some new pieces of artwork in. The cover art is finished and it's absolutely gorgeous. And well, it seems like this is actually going to happen. We're actually going to get this done by the end of this month. So please, if you haven't signed up, do so. I really want to get this going strong. If you have any thoughts or questions on having your friends run antagonists, or you want to give me some feedback on Galder's Gazetteer, let me know. We have a really great comment section. People are always down there discussing things. People intelligently disagree, very little toxicity, and I respond to nearly everything. So if you have something on your mind, make sure to let me know in the comments below. Okay, so this is our 1-page character sheet. I'm just going to use this one as an example. This is from my last campaign. And I think it's important that it only fits on 1 page because it makes it easy for your friend to read it, right? We want them to get involved. If you hand them a whole small novel, chances are they'll never get around to it. So make it easy for them. Let's go ahead and zoom right in right here and see what we got. All right, so the name of the character and what their relative class level is. And then right underneath it, I give a quote as though spoken from them. Something that really summarizes their point of view and their personality. And then a brief summary of the main points right there. Who you are in this world. Elok is the Grand Knight of Lady Silva, the Living Goddess. All of Blackfire lives under her and your protection. So if you only read that one paragraph, you know exactly who this person is in the world. After that, I give a bit of a background summarizing the key points that this character would be aware of in the campaign setting. The blight is spreading. Big deal. You must keep the people strong. Again, his main goal right there. And then I go into some personality traits. In addition to the ideal, bond, flaw, I also added these other ones right here. Regret. Something to give maybe a little more clue on some other aspects of his personality, because this is all this person's gonna have to go off of. You are a true believer. Mere facts cannot sway you. All right, and then I get into development. Now, these are some things that are going on in the world that this character, this leader of this faction or this antagonistic force would want to pursue or want to change. They might want to root out the lizard folk. They might want to stamp out the recurrent priests. They might want to investigate some troubling falsehoods. And so this is just sort of cluing them in onto some goals that this character might have. They are, of course, free to pursue what they want, but this is just laying some things out for them to try. And then I get into followers. Now, right here when I did this particular one, this was more in the Out of the Abyss style, how they listed the followers that each individual house or faction had inside Mesobrandon. Nowadays, I'm using the Strongholds and Followers rules. So here are the things that this faction has at its disposal. Here are the things that they can command. They can command a bunch of spies and commoners to do research. Alok can command some woods, some scouts and some rangers to go hunt things down. And they also have, some warrior forces. And this little stat block I added just for me, so I had something I could reference later on. In retrospect, doing this nowadays, I like having the simplified version of just saying, okay, here these people are, not having to list out how many veterans, how many things. I say, okay, you have a squad of rangers, you have a legion of light green infantry, something like that. Besides expanded conditions and variant classes, I have one more design hack up my sleeve.